some people actually asked me to review their book, so that's what we're doing today. Welcome to the Attic Dungeon. My name is Sam, and whether you want to overcome death itself or turn into a slime guy, I'm here to help you with everything. As always, I begin with thanking you for watching me. Huzzah! I've made it to another episode. Yay me. I keep doing this really well, I think. I want to thank you a little bit more because me gaining people that watch me apparently has led to other people asking me to review their third-party book. And to me, that's very crazy because I'm just a guy with a camera and a mic on an attic doing my thing, and people seem to like my thing and trust me enough to give an objective review of their book, something that they no doubt have worked on for many months before it was even finished. So thank you again for watching me. Thank you people at Book Brew Games for having some vote of confidence in me. And now let's see how I try not to butcher up talking about your book. Let's start up front. I read the entire book, obviously. That would be really sad if I didn't. And in general, I'm quite positive about this book. Why? There's a lot of cool stuff in there. First off, there are 3 new classes in this book. Pretty damn great. Wizards will never put 3 new classes in one core book. That is not the player's handbook. So that is a lot of options to work with. Then they have subclasses for every class except the Artificer. I think that has to do with the release timing of the book. This was released, I think, right before Tasha, so the Artificer was still rolling into the core rules of Dungeons and Dragons. Can't blame them, but each of the other classes has a new, cool subclass. Then they expanded racial feats, so not every race has racial feats. They thought that they should, so they did. They talk about magic. They rework some spells as well, some crappy spells, Witch Bolt for example. And they talk about variant rules, some rules in the core game that aren't, like 2-weapon fighting. It's cool, but it's a bit, And last but not least, they talk about role-playing an evil character. And that is actually a part that I really liked. Not because I want to role-play an evil character, I'm way too much of a goody two-shoes in games, but they do it in such a way that people could play an evil character without making their entire party or the people behind the party and the dungeon master hate them until the end of time. They talk about playing an evil character with actual depth, motivation, how you can build up relations with other people as an evil character, and that is incredibly well done, and I want to give them a special kudos on that bit before I talk about the rest. So, the book itself is seeped in Ravenloftian themes. The story behind the book is that this is actually a journal that was sold to you very cheaply by some chap, and it opens up with apologize, like, oh, terribly sorry, I sold you this journal. It actually belongs to Lord Soth, one of the Ravenloftian lords that you find. And whoever holds the journal will start getting chased by zombies and what have you, angry undead. And by selling you the journal, I hope that most of the zombies will now veer your way instead of mine and the previous owners. Terribly sorry, but do enjoy the read. It's a cool opening, actually. It's very fun. At least while you're getting chased by ravenous ghouls, you have a nice read, And the theme sticks throughout the book. They really stick to their theme. It is Soth's journal, so Soth's Accursed journal even, so I've already explained why it's cursed. And Soth is a Ravenloftian lord, and you find notes by him in the journal, much like you do in Xanatar's Guide to Everything. The beholder Xanatar has written down stuff throughout the book. They do the same thing here with the notes. It works, it's funny, I like that style of writing, so it's nice that they try to belong to the first party books style-wise, writing style-wise. So, Soth's Accursed journal, good start, good flavor, jolly good read. But I'm not just here to tell you how a book reads, we're also here to judge what's in the book. And we'll start with the subclasses, since that was the first bit as well. I'll work in the same order as the book did. So, subclasses for all of the existing classes, minus the Artificer. There's some very cool stuff in there. like the Legion Warlock, so I really like that bit flavor-wise. Yeah, maybe in general, I really like how they handle their subclasses and their classes flavor-wise. They give you the option of, look, this is how the class works and this is how you could roleplay it, but don't feel forced to do so. You could also roleplay it this way. In a few cases, they give you multiple, in a lot of cases, they give you multiple options on how to roleplay a subclass, how to incorporate it into your character concept, and that is something I can tremendously appreciate because, as you know, that's what I do as well. I have my class RP guides where I do nothing else but say, look, this class is always played this way, let's do something completely different. They do that as well. Good, love it, keep doing that. So what can you find here? There's a Barbarian who goes a bit Hulk, as in the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets, the longer he keeps his range going, the more benefits he gains. There's a Bard who's all about believing in stuff, not necessarily religious stuff, but faith, having faith in something is what he uses as his shtick. There's a Cleric who works with undead without necessarily being evil, because the Death Cleric in the Dungeon Master Guide was always kind of intended as an evil, a bad guy, also like an NPC bad guy class attempt, and this one is a bit more flexible while still working with a lot of undead. Ravenloft, you know, haha. You had a druid with water, a ranger who wants to be Hawkeye, no, just kidding, there's a ranger who works with elementally infused arrows, which is cool. The wizard was a telepath, and the sorcerer was a time sorcerer. The fighter was a duelist, so it's a lot of stuff, and none of it has been done before for those respective classes in the official books, so that's good. They expand your options. Are they good options? Yes. In generally, I honestly believe the subclasses are decent options. Some of them might be a bit too good. And herein you will find, I think, my only point of critique for Soth's Accursed journal is that a few of the abilities that I read sound tremendously powerful to the point of being a bit game breaking. Not a whole, I think like maybe a handful. I read through the book and I was like, wow, these are really strong. I can see them breaking games quite easily. And I'm going to mention those, but most of the abilities are well done, well executed. A few are a bit wordy, but that's okay. You should be perfectly fine, I think, playing most of these subclasses. There were two of them where I was like, these sound very powerful. The first one was the Barbarian. So the Barbarian has an ability where the longer he stays in rage, the more attack and damage bonus he gains. And it's capped. Goody, it's capped. But at higher levels, you can easily get like +3, +4 extra on top of all of your attacks, both in attack and in damage. And that's really good. I mean, that's +4 on your attack is having like +20% chance to hit, and that is very strong, even if it is after 4 turns. And I know that 5th edition battles are relatively short, so that's going to be something for like tough boss fights, which means you should be tough as well. But in my head, it sounded very powerful. And this is an ability where I'm like, I'm curious how this will play out. And on the other hand, I was a bit sad because an ability like what the Barbarian has, like what the Path of the Focused Fury offers, is going to make you use one other Barbarian feature less. If you're gaining very strong attack bonuses, then why would you reckless attack regularly? So as you know, Barbarians have reckless attack. They can always attack with advantage, but everything else will have advantage against them as well. And I think if you're certain that you have this, at a higher level, this very strong bonus from your path, you don't really need reckless attack unless in specific cases where the armor class of the enemy is too high. So I'm never a big fan of subclass features that push you away from using main class features. And that's what this one does. I think, now that I think about it even more than I already did, I don't think the ability is going to be too strong. It's going to give you, at the end of battle, it's still going to be as if you've doubled whatever magic bonus you've had on your weapon, and that's pretty strong. But casters can do that as well, and you can't cast. So I think overall it's going to be good. The ability that I had most awkward thoughts with, and I'm going to have to look up the name for a moment. I see this is a new book, so I have to look up stuff. I think it's Chronic Dilation. Yeah, it is Chronic Dilation from the Temporal Magic Sorcerer. I love time magic. Timey-wimey stuff is great. My favorite dragonflight in Warcraft is the Bronze Dragonflight. I love doing timey stuff. This one is too strong in my head though. So the idea here is at level 6, the Sorcerer gains access to both Haste and Slow, if you don't know him yet, which is pretty strong already. I'm willing not to take Haste at level 5 if I get it for free at level 6, but crazy stuff is you can either cast them by expending sorcery points, 3 sorcery points, yeah, or using your regular old spell slot, but if you cast it with sorcery points, if you cast Haste for 3 sorcery points, you can keep a separate concentration on it. Wizards has been tremendously careful with concentration. Not a single class or subclass has double concentration at this point. Sure, there's some shenanigans where you can give concentration to a familiar maybe, or artificers have the spell storing item feature at level 11 that allows them to use an item to cast level 1 or 2 artificer spell. Other people can cast the spell as well while holding the item, and they can keep concentration then. So that's the craziest that Wizards has gone with. Main class features at level 11. You can give somebody who doesn't cast spells concentration on a first or a second level spell. Here a sorcerer gets a separate concentration for Haste or Slow. Nothing is stopping you, I think, from picking up twin cast and double hasting somebody, and somebody else obviously, on a separate concentration, and then doing something else with your main concentration. That is haste 2 people, something else on you, and go. Haste and magic weapon, to make it simple. I don't know, I don't care. I think this is the ability of all the subclass abilities. As good as I think that some of them really are, this one is broken. You don't give people a second concentration. That is going to be problematic. Also, the concentration checks are separate, so that's logic, you know. The concentration checks are separate for whatever spell you're doing and the haste or slow spell. But I would just pump my concentration checks to the max on this wizard, and haste all day long. I don't care what else I do with my sorcery points. Just twin haste like there's no tomorrow. And that is, I think, the one ability of the subclasses that I took affront with, because it's clearly capable of breaking battles. Haste is a very good spell when you get it, and it remains a very relevant spell throughout the game, and the only thing that holds it back is the fact that it's a concentration spell. You will later on not use haste that much because you want to cast, I don't know, Prismatic Wall or something big that requires concentration, but being able to do so and giving out double haste if you have the sorcery point, or just regular haste or slow, is insanely powerful at level 6 if I check it with the power skills. But enough about that. I said that, like, my one critique about the book is that there's a few abilities that are unbalanced. This is number 1 or 2. I think number 2. Like, the top one will come later. So so much for the subclasses. Again, I like the flavor. I like the abilities on most of them. The stance dancing for the fighter is a bit complicated, I think, as far as fighter mechanics go. Nothing wrong with that. They were very short, bursted, powerful abilities. But that made it okay. The fact that it only lasted for like a round, if I got it right, balanced that out. Because first I was reading those stances like, damn, they're powerful. And I was like, oh, they only last for like a turn. Okay, sure. Go at it, fighter. You deserve some smacky stuff. that brings us to the main classes. So 3 classes were introduced in this book. First of all, crowd favorite, the Death Knight. Second of all, personal favorite, the Elementalist. Third, a cool class, a really cool class, the Monstrol. And I'll go over them bit by bit. The Death Knight is exactly what you would expect of a Death Knight. He's a chap that can summon undead, he can curse people, he's this big platey chap that fights up front, so that's all cool. He works with souls as his power source, which is also really cool, and has a few really unique abilities that I want to go over with you. First off, he's a spellcaster, but he doesn't have spell slots, he has soul slots, he has a limited amount, so he uses souls, and when he casts a spell, he has to hand in a number of soul slots equal to the spell level. He also takes damage because of that, and the higher the spell level, the more damage you take. So good stuff. I think thematically that's okay. He does not have the same, like after a long rest, he does not have the same amount of spell slots as, let's say, a wizard does. Though he is capable of casting up to maximum level spells. He can, but if he does that, if he wakes up and casts his maximum level spell, that's it. He's done. No more spell casting for right now. He can refuel his spell casting by slaying stuff. If something dies and it has a soul, he can absorb the soul and it will give him back 1 spell slot, 1 soul slot, so to speak. So he can cast level 1 spell again. So to cast the second 5th level spell after you ran out of stuff, you would have to pick up 5 additional souls again. And I really like this mechanic. It's cool, it's very thematic. Also, a cool thing, flavor again. The Death Knight explicitly doesn't harm the souls or eat them or devour them or prevent them from going to the afterlife. No, he just channels their power and then they go on. So that's a cool thing, because that way you can actually implement the Death Knight in a normal campaign without him being the devourer of souls and everybody hating him for eating up every soul he comes across because he wants more spells. Also, when he does channel a soul, he gains back some health. So there's a nice harm and heal mechanic on your spell casting for yourself. You want to balance how strong of a spell you cast. So that's all good, really. My one concern here is that on a day, it's not that hard to cast multiple level 9 spells in my head. So he goes all the way up to level 10 actually, but I'll get back to that in a moment. But I have to check his class table again for a moment. Yeah, so let's say at level 17 he gains access to level 9 slots like everybody else. He can only cast 1 and that would be his only spell, because then he only has 9 soul slots as well. So he casts 1 level 9 spells and is done casting. But all it would take is for him to slay 9 things with a soul to be able to cast another level 9 spell. Now, no other class can do that. There's not a single class capable of casting 2 level 9 slots, I think. And this is a bit dangerous. Now, he doesn't have Wish or anything crazy. He has Astral Projection, Imprisonment, Power Word, Kill, True Resurrection, and a spell called Weird. So there's no campaign breaking 9th level spells, and I think they did that very much on purpose, because they know he can cast multiple level 9 spells in one day, but it is still very, 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 very strong. Then again, casting a level 9 spell also makes him take 83 unpreventable damage. So I think it's cool that he can cast 2 level 9 spells a day, but it's going to cost you time and souls and health and what have you before you can do so. I said he could cast up to level 10, and that's not a lie. He can actually upcast to level 10. They didn't make any 10th level spells, don't worry. It stops at 9, but a spell that can be upcast all the way to level 10 once he reaches 19th level. But that's okay. I think because we all know that spells that are being upcast usually have a less powerful effect than an actual spell of the level, and casting the level 10 spell takes away 102 hit points and you can't prevent the damage. So mid-combat, those spells are pretty costly to cast, and I think there lies the important balancing mechanic. You can get off this really powerful spell, but chances are you're just getting whacked to death afterwards. The Death Knight has 3 subclasses that might not surprise you. They're kind of the traditional classes. There's one that revolves around Frost, one that revolves around Spirit, and the third one was a bit of a surprise. The Realm of the Vengeful Vision, it was called. And that was like oh, this is a cool surprise. This is not what I would have expected. I expected something blood, life leeching, channel the life force related stuff, and the vision one surprised me. It was a nice surprise to see that one. The Frost one's pretty cool. One of the things it can do is like create a small ice tornado around you, and you can keep that going for a pretty long time at higher levels. But since the damage doesn't scale, it's always 2d6, which is really good in the beginning, and it's okay near the end. And then it gets compensated for being around you like the entire combat, basically. So that is a really well done balancing on them in this case. I had issues, though, with the balancing of the Swearing Spirit. The Swearing Spirit is the chap with the curses. And I love that. If I play a Death Knight, I think I would be the guy with the curses. But one of the curses, well, 2 of the curses are very powerful. One, again, it depends on how long combat goes on, but basically every time you hit, it start at the beginning, Sam. It's called Curse of Decay. It kind of is like one of those spells that allows you to add extra damage. A tiny hunter's mark, let's say. It adds 1d4 to your weapon damage, but if you hit with a weapon, it will add an additional d4 on the next attack, and it can keep stacking, but it can only stack once per turn, not per round, per turn. Important detail. So that means if somehow if you've hit 3 turns in a row, you're doing 3d4 bonus damage on top of your normal attack. The class, of course, has extra attack. The focus is on swishy swashy sword stuff. Since you can only cast like 1 or 2 spells and then your batteries are drained and you need to recharge. So that's a lot of extra damage, actually. In longer fights, the longer the fight goes on, the better this gets. You can only curse 1 enemy at first, and only once per long rest at first as well. So it's really one of those, now this guy, I want to kill this guy, on the boss obviously. But there's no save against this. The only save is you hitting the dude, and you should be doing that a lot since you're a big ass sword wielder. So there's potential abuse here, also because it's once per turn and not once per round. So if you smack something on your round and smack it again with an opportunity attack somehow, or with an attack somebody else allows you to perform, like the there's a Cleric subclass that when you enchant something, you can also have someone make an attack, something like that. You know what I'm talking about. So there's potential abuse to have huge damage here. But the second one is a curse that really made me wonder how I would play this out. Basically, it's a curse. It's called the Curse of Impending Doom, and I'm just going to read this one. You curse the target with inevitable dread. Every time you hit the cursed target with a weapon attack for the first time during a turn, it makes a Constitution saving throw with a DC equal to your proficiency bonus times the number of rounds during which you have hit the creature while it was cursed this way. On a fail, the creature dies. Period. So, proficiency bonus is pretty low. So I think it's good that they start from proficiency bonus, because that starts at 2. That means this is Constitution at the first round. If you get this, it's going to be like level 2, and then 4, 6, 8. So again, it grows in power. But once your proficiency bonus goes up a bit and you've been fighting for 3 rounds and you've been hitting the target, I think the chances of killing something are not unlikely. And I just hope as a dungeon master this doesn't happen to like some big boss fight you planned out, and you didn't use a creature with legendary resistance, or your legendary resistances are gone or whatever, and this curse just smacks you dead even though your hit points weren't all that low yet. I get it's not wow insta-kill because it needs to build up, and it starts from proficiency bonus times the number of rounds that you've hit him, and here it is the number of rounds. But those are like, in my head, I really hope not a single dungeon master has to deal with this thing popping up at the worstest moment where you're trying to build some climactic battle and the Death Knight just comes up and swiggity. Where I see this being awfully dangerous, and I could see min-maxy people playing it, is, for example, you play this class and then either in your party you have or you pick up some levels in Divination Wizard, and you wait until you get a crappy roll in your bank. I forgot the name of the ability, but you know that Divination Wizards at the start of the day get to roll portent. There we are. Get to roll 2 d20s, and they get to write down the numbers, and they can use them to replace any roll before the roll is done. The combination with this is very powerful, like extremely powerful. Of course, the wizard has to roll low, but that is going to happen. Don't worry. That is going to happen. Could also be done with stuff like the lucky feat. You know, a lot of dice manipulating mechanics can make this incredibly strong and borderline broken. But the good news is we're past most of the abilities where I said, oh, I'm kind of doubting about those abilities. The other abilities are really cool. There's other curses where you can link yourself to an enemy and they take damage as well, and that's a really cool mechanic. There's a mechanic to raise someone from the dead the moment they die with a number of hit points and temporary hit points, and those are all super cool, and that's how I really like this Cursey, the Swearing Spirit Death Knight. But I really had to talk about the other ability where I was like, this is borderline overpowered for me, but let's stop doing that now. So the Death Knight, cool martial spellcaster with a really unique spellcasting mechanic that revolves around the balance of killing yourself a little bit and taking life back, which is what a Death Knight should be about. So well done on the general atmosphere of the Death Knight, and like 90% of the abilities are really good. So now we talk about the Elementalist. A wisdom-based spellcaster, just like the Death Knight, by the way, was also wisdom-based. A wisdom-based spellcaster, the lore is that due to some traumatic event, you got fused with a primordial spirit, and now you've got the power. Cool mechanic here is that you actually kind of have two subclasses. At level 1, you pick what type of element the spirit has infused you with. Fire, ice, lightning, and thunder, they're kept separately. Or acid, cool selection. And then later on you also pick a subclass, so you can kind of mix and match to see what works best for you. You could be a fire primordial knight, or a thunder elemental master, or you could pick both thunder and fire as a dualmancy subclass, or you could acid and fire or be an acid knight. You know, there's some combinations. Obviously some of them work better together than some of the other ones, but it's really nice to have that kind of freedom in a character class. It kind of reminded me of the Warlock and all the invocations that they can pick, and how you can, even within the class, really build a bit of your own character with it. So that's good stuff. I like this class because I like having elemental magic, and Wizards of the Coast seem to be afraid to make a lot of elemental based classes. You obviously have the Tempest Cleric, one of my personal favorites, and the Light Cleric, but there's no wizards or sorcerers that say, now we're going to specialize in this type of magic and do awesome stuff with it. Storm Sorcerer tried, but he fell a bit short. It might be because they're afraid that if you focus on one element too much and you encounter enemies that are immune to the element, you will be caught with your pants down, but that's very easily solved. It's not because they are going to be focusing on lightning damage that are going to be their only spells. You still have a spell list from which you can pick a few backup spells in case you meet a lightning immune enemy. There you are, problem solved, and you still have a badass elemental based class. So that's very cool. I like this class a lot. I like the subclasses a lot. I like the abilities a lot. One ability that I'm going to talk about in a bit. One remark that I had was that the Primordial Knight gave the ability to use martial weapons, so he's a bit more of the Gish character. You know, your Elementalist can take to the front lines because they get armor, medium armor, they already have light armor, and weapons, they don't get shields if I'm mistaken. But there's no reason really, they don't do anything with the martial weapon. Sure, there's a bunch of spells that they can use it in, because some of the spells in the spells department are more Gish spells, to have a larger variety of those, and those are really good. And they are always weapon attack plus additional effect. So there you will use the additional 1 damage you gain from using a martial weapon or whatever. But they don't really have any incentive to use the weapon that they gain. And I think that's a bit, you know, that's too bad. It doesn't make the subclass bad, because all the other features that it gets are pretty good. But it also doesn't get to use its weapon with wisdom or whatever. So it still has to have this high dexterity or strength, fat chance of that, to use its weapon effectively, and it really has no reason to do so. So I would have loved some, I put my sword on fire and go swoosh swoosh kind of stuff there, but it's okay. It does get armor, and that, oh, it does get shield proficiency, there we are. It gains some survivability, and that's always something I value in a subclass. There was one ability that I wanted to talk about, and it's one of the fire abilities. Like the first ability the fire guys get is a once per day ability. Later it's 2 per day, and it's there that the issues start. And it's very simple actually. When you attack something with fire damage, can be a group. So fireball, for example, you can spend the use of this ability to make all of the targets that either got hit by the spell attack roll or failed their save. So the spell needs to hit. And not just do damage, like full damage. They gain 2 levels of exhaustion. Done. There's no save against it. You just need to get hit. And that's okay, because 2 levels of exhaustion means you have half. Well, it's kind of okay, because it reduces your speed by half, which is really powerful. But it's a once per day effect, so that's okay. But if you do it again, because you gain an extra use at level 13 or 14, you don't give them, you can give them an additional level of exhaustion. Not 2, that would be too crazy. But you do give them 1 more, which means that with 2 simple fire spells, and those can be like, I don't know, Scorching Ray and Fireball, like low level spell slots, you can give a boss potentially 3 levels of exhaustion, which would mean all their attacks have disadvantage. If your boss is a spellcaster, no biggie there. If your boss actually leans on using weapons a lot, this is going to be an issue. And there's no spell saving, there's no saving throw against it. So your dungeon master cannot say, oh, I use my legendary resistance to save from the effect. No, he would actually have to save on every fire spell thrown at him to not gain 2 or 3 levels of exhaustion. I would not have added the 3rd level of exhaustion. There, that's actually all I need to say about it. The first 2 levels is great. So their ability checks are at a disadvantage, and they get half speed, which is a really powerful level 1 ability on its own. Even the second use I would have given them, but I would not have given the ability to add extra level of exhaustion. It's too powerful for a level 1 ability. Then all of the elements have this cool little aura ability, which has infinite uses. My god, infinite uses, but it requires you to always be close to something. And since you're a spellcaster that in most cases will only have light armor, you don't want to be close to things. So it's a really cool, are you going to put yourself at risk to gain this effect kind of ability? And that's very nice for a spellcaster to play with. So the Elementalist, really powerful, cool concept of kind of mixing multiple choices to create a very unique elemental spellcaster. With a few nice spell subclasses as well. And less confusing, less difficult to build than the Warlock, which is good. Our last class was the Monstrol, and the Monstrol is a special thing. It's another wisdom class. They're all wisdom classes, the spell casting. and they work with shapeshifting. No, they're not druids, they're half-casters, but they dedicate themselves to one form. They choose one form into which they will shape 2 times a day, I think it starts out with, so just like the druid. There's a form for werewolves, a form for slime creatures, and a form for succubus or incubus, which is all pretty cool. They're very distinctive forms, that's really cool. And they're presented as a very religious class, like you have to join up with a cult and they will initiate you. It's a bit like how you become a werewolf in Skyrim. You have to get initiated into this cult and then you become a werewolf. I think it kind of reminds me of that, and that is really cool. Subclass wise, the transformation also allows you to change your body, so you could be a male, but your transformation could be female. You can go wild with that. They give you complete freedom on how it looks, and each of them has a nice mechanic. I cannot remember the one. Oh yeah, no, I can. So the werewolf works around the 4E mechanic, the one called Bloodied. So if your enemy passes the half hit point, you gain extra abilities. The less HP your enemy has, the more abilities actually you gain on them, and you gain like these feral claws and go to town. Really works well for a werewolf flavor. Kudos to that one. The slime one works on grappling stuff, which is cool because there are not enough subclasses that work around grapple. There's namely one, and it's bad. It's the Battle Rager Barbarian. That's the only subclass that really is focused on grappling, and it's really bad at it as well. So this is actually probably the best grappling class I've seen, and it's not broken, it's fun, it's cool. I like the slime idea as well. Good. And then the succubus incubus thing works around charming people, and that's really fun as well because that is what they do. My only remark there would be at the start of the Monstrol, they really put like this little post-it note, and totally cool, like explaining the fact that you can swap identity. You can form an entirely new identity. You can swap from male to female. They really present this as an it's your choice kind of class, and you can do with it what you want. So I don't want to call it pandering to the LGBTQ community, but it's obviously aimed at being very inclusive. But then the succubus subclass has an ability that only works on the opposite sex, and that's a bit weird if you're aiming part of your lore at people who are looking for their own identity and want to see how the world works for them and how love works and how relations work. And then there's this subclass that says, yeah, but you can only seduce men because you're a woman, and you can only seduce women because you're a man. That's my one critique on the Monstrol class, because otherwise it's a fantastic class with a really cool flavor. Period. So that's where, I'm talking a lot today, but there's a lot to talk about. I mean, it's 3 whole classes. So the Monstrol is a very, 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 very cool class with a very strong flavor, cool abilities, very distinctive subclasses, pretty unique subclasses as well, and a nice amount of spells that are centered at like improving themselves or charming people if you're the succubus thingy. So there we are. I talked about all 3 classes and all of the subclasses. Again, in general, I'm really positive about these, apart from the few abilities that I picked out. The biggest issue still being, I think, the double... Yeah, no, I'm going to move it up to 1. Like, the double concentration on the Time Sorcerer, that's a problem. That really is a problem, and I would rule that differently at my table, but I would make it work. So in general, I really have to say well done on creating 3 classes that are distinct, that don't feel like they already exist in the game. Because here's me, a guy who reskins classes all the time, and I know I can make a Death Knight in the game by combining stuff like just taking a class, repainting the weapon, the damage type, for example, and continuing. But this really is a Death Knight, like the curses, the undead minions, the whole resurrected bound to serve edge that they give to it is really well done for all of the classes. Huzzah, huzzah, triple huzzah. My only hope was that one of the 3 classes, and I was kind of hoping for the Monstrol to be that class, would be a martial class. 5e has spellcasters everywhere. If we add these to the mix, if we would add these to the mix, that would give us 16 classes in total, I think, and only 3 are martial. 4, sorry, Fighter, Monk, Barb, and Rogue. Blood Hunter kind of as well, if I'm not mistaken. So the balance Martial versus Spellcaster is a bit disturbed, and I was really hoping, but that's not a critique towards the book, that's just a critique towards Dungeons and Dragons in general. I think that there could be an extra Martial class in the game, for all I care. There was one ability, one ability from the slime that I wanted to talk about. That's also like, they can they can eat memories, super cool. But it was also an ability without a limit on the resources. So it's like, it can do a 4d10 damage each turn, a very strong debuff. There's a save involved, obviously, so the target can actually resist, and then it's no damage whatsoever. But there's no limit on how many times you can use the ability, or on how many memories and proficiencies you can maintain. Because the idea with the slime guy is that he can absorb proficiencies from their targets, and hypothetically, until he went to sleep, he could eat and maintain as many memories and proficiencies from targets as he could, and that sounded a bit iffy. But I'm going to stop dissing the abilities, because the intent behind them is really cool. How they work is really cool. A few of them need just a resource limiter to work, actually. That's all you need to think about when using this book. Okay, there's like 3 or 4 abilities that are a bit too powerful. I'll just put a resource limitation on them and they will be fine. Then they added feats. They added a lot of feats. Mainly they added feats for all of the races that don't have racial feats yet. And they're cool. They're good. They're flavorful. They are pretty balanced. There's a few highs and lows there, but that's okay. But I really hope that... I don't want to undo their work, but I hope that is something that Wizards will actually do as well, to expand on racial feats, because that's cool. That's how you keep a strong identity to your races, even though you're using stuff like Tasha's flexible ability score bonuses. So the racial feats, really cool, really well done. Stuff like bugbears can now use their longer range on reactions as well, so not only during their turn. It's cool stuff. Magic, I already said the spells mainly are like Gish spells, so close combat spells, and that's good because there's a very short list of those and we need more, and there's stuff of different themes and elements and effects. Now your Gish can do more than light something on fire or make stuff go boom, and that is really, really good. The other spells that were in there were really fine. I think the spells really, if those were written into a normal core book, nobody would notice. They're really well done. Then we come to the variant rules, the last bit that I'm going to talk about extensively, because I already kind of talked about the role-playing an evil character a bit. There's variant rules in there for a few things, and I'm going to... I need to go through the book a lot more today, because this is not a book that I've read 5 times like most of the other books, obviously. This is something that I need to look at. Yes, so variant rules. They started with revisiting a few spells. They revisited True Strike and Witch Bolt in the hopes of making those spells decent, and they actually did. They basically upgraded Witch Bolt's range and the fact that not just the initial damage now scales, but all of the other damage as well. It's still easy to escape the spell, because 60 feet is not that far, but now the damage actually gives you a legitimate reason to cast this spell. So, and for True Strike, they still made it a concentration full action spell, but now it doesn't just give you advantage, it also allows you to bypass any resistances and immunities and citing only resistances. So there's a niche for it that actually works now, not just a niche that eats your concentration and does nothing. So there's that. They did a bit of things for buying and selling magic items, which is cool. I think that's not something I need as a dungeon master. The next one was cool, 2-weapon fighting. We all know the downfall of 2-weapon fighting is that you need to be wielding 2 light weapons and it eats up your bonus action. What they added is that actually you can wield 1 light weapon and 1 larger weapon from the get-go, which... And their character historically makes more sense, because that's how dual wielding usually worked. And they also edited the dual wielding feat so that you can use your offhand attack as part of your attack action and use your bonus action for something that is not an extra attack, very specifically worded. And that's cool because it is the issue with dual wielding is that, okay, you get that one extra attack with a small weapon, but you can't do anything else with your bonus action. And so many subclasses rely on bonus actions to do stuff that it blocks off your choices of subclass. And this is something I would be willing to implement, actually. That's a really good rule. And then they added the wait action, which used to be there. Now you need to use the ready action to specify what you're going to do. But usually in previous editions, you had the wait action where you could just say, I'll wait until a certain point and then I pop into the initiative order and do stuff. And then at the very end of the book, there's some creature statistics because the Dead Knight has various summons that needed statistics, so they added those. Those are pretty cool. There's an ice dragon in there that you can ride. Go have fun. And there we are. That is my entire talk about Soth's Accursed Journal. It's been a long talk, but it's good. It's a good book, and I actually think I am going to use this at my table to test out some of my theories, rebalance some of the abilities, and you have a really good third-party book that adds a lot more options to character creation, to multi-classing, a few more spells for your Gish character, so stuff like the wizard, Spellblade wizards can also use this. So that's it. That's my entire trip through Soth's Accursed Journal. I hope I didn't disappoint you people who gave me this book. I really like it. Like 90% of the book is really well done and can be used at any table willing to do so. But there are some abilities in the book that need rebalancing in order to not break your game. I'm looking at you, Time, Sorcerer, and Slime Eaty Guy. Thank you. It's a good book. Buy it. Do these guys a favor. Do your own table a favor. Offer some cool Death Knight options to your edgelords at the table. I know I have a friend who's going to love this book. Have a look at it. Find it. Read it. Use it. Talk to me about it. And I'll see you all again in 2 weeks in the Attic Dungeon.